All right, everybody, welcome in once again to TriStateFootball.com's Monday Night Recap Show. It is the 30th of September, 2024, and I am Daniel Kuhn alongside my co-host, Jacob Berkemeyer, and we are going to talk about all the action from week 6 across the
Yep.
tri-state. Got a couple games of note we're going to talk about, and then, of course, as usual, we'll go into rankings and the week 7 preview and the conference, outlook from Jacob. And then there's no Monday night game for us to scurry off to watch the Bengals lose tonight, thank gosh. But we'll keep it as condensed as we possibly can tonight, not try to go an hour long this time like
Yeah.
we did last week. But anywho, it is another. It's not glorious out. It's been really bad weather, but it's been
Yeah.
a Monday. It's a Monday. We're here and we're live, and we're going to kick it off with Jacob. He's going to talk about probably I think most noteworthy game of the weekend,
Yeah.
just solely based on of how big of a stunner it was, Hamilton and Princeton.
Yeah, it might not have been the rivalry that X and Elder have, but in terms of upset and just shock value, kind of, Hamilton beating Princeton 34-0.
Handily.
That Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really in doubt all game. And I mean, I know we had a very, very rainy weekend. A lot of the Kentucky games got pushed back to Saturday. Was unsure if some of the games on Friday were going to get canceled in the Cincinnati area, but most of them played. So you have to wonder too if that, played a part in anything. But I mean, Hamilton played amazing this game. They only allowed 18 passing yards. D'Angelo Birch, 4 for 9 for Princeton, 18 passing yards and 2 picks. So forcing some turnovers. In the running game, Princeton only had 27 rushing yards. So just a really rough offensive night for Princeton, only putting up, what's that math? Yeah. 45. Yeah, 45 yards of offense. So definitely rough, but yeah, 45 to 302. And then, I mean, Hamilton was really just getting it done on the ground. It's crazy. They both had the same passing completions. So Princeton had 4 passing completions and Hamilton also did, but Princeton had 18 yards. Hamilton had 113. A large part to RJ Shepard Ruffin. He had 1 catch for 65 yards and a touchdown. So they found an explosive play in there, which is 14-0 to start the first quarter, then 13 points scored in the second quarter. So they walked into halftime with a 27-0 lead, and then it was 7 points. They scored another touchdown, got the running clock, and that was the game. So, amazing job from Hamilton here tonight, or not tonight, but on Friday night. They really proved themselves. Princeton's been a team all year. I mean, beating West at the beginning of the year was huge for them too. So Princeton definitely needs a bounce back next week against Oak Hills. We'll see if they can get it, or if whatever happened last week kind of continues to seep in that locker room, and if they struggle to figure it out. But you wonder if the weather played a part in it as well. Not as, able to be explosive and make explosive plays. So, but yeah, definitely the biggest shocker of the night. I don't know if there's anything you want to contribute to that, because it's definitely, I didn't believe that when I saw that score at first.
Well, I didn't cover the game, and I didn't, follow along with it, without the entire night, but I was keeping an eye on it, and obviously the score line is quite crazy to think about, because Princeton's just been outside of that loss they had week 1 against Moeller, and it's Moeller. I mean, they've been so incredibly solid, throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
They had a close one against Lakota East. They pulled that one out. I was there for that one. But, being there that night and kind of watching that team go through their, routine and play the way they play football, it's shocking to me that they weren't able to manage much of anything, let alone, like, they didn't score at all, but let alone what Jacob was describing. It just sounds like there was just no offense all around all night. And I'm sorry.
No, you can go. My bad. I
I
didn't
thought
mean
you were
to
about to
cut
say
you off.
something. I wanted to give you. It
No,
was your
you're
game,
good.
so
You're good.
what I was getting at is from what you were describing to me, and when you're playing in games, like I'm assuming the
Oh,
environment. What
all right. Some technical difficulties might be going on here.
I still see you. Can you see me? Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you were just cutting out a little bit, so I didn't know
You
if it was.
were you were
I don't,
freezing. I don't know if it's.
yeah, we were both freezing up for a little bit there, so I don't know if we're good now. I know we were experiencing some technical difficulties there, so I apologize to our viewers. We
Well,
were just as confused as you guys probably were, so I think we're good
I will say, this there is no product placement in this live stream. This is certainly not a Spectrum Internet sponsored live stream because I pay for it and it's not very good if it's my end. And that goes to show you we've made it a month or so doing this without any, and of course we have it tonight. But anyways, if you can still hear me and I can see you and we're doing good, I will, cap off what I was going to say about this game really quick is it, from Princeton's perspective. I mean, if there's a game and you're playing, in a game that's where you got this much rain, I mean, passing's probably not going to work.
right.
And it seems like Hamilton was able to find some big plays on the passing offensive side of the ball. But, 9 times out of 10, when you're playing in a game with this much rain, it's probably not going to work. So you really got to lean on that run game and pound the rock. And it
Yeah,
just seems
and
like
that's
Princeton
where
was.
I forgot to mention as well, and that's what Hamilton was able to do, where Princeton just wasn't really able to get
Yeah.
it going at all, running the ball. Grayson Goldsmith for Hamilton had 25 attempts, 166 yards, and 3 touchdowns,
And there's
along
your
with Andre Bailey, 9 for 32. So, I mean, they had 37 carries as a team, so controlling time of possession there. And we were talking about it, earlier this year too. When is the weather going to play a role in? And we finally got it, and we'll see if the weather holds up as the month of October goes through. But more rain's going to come. So
Well, it's like we didn't get any rain all year, and of course here,
yeah,
here it comes, and now it's going to just not stop. But anywho,
yeah,
yeah, that would be you're pretty much the bottom line of this game, and the score is Princeton was not able to run the ball, whereas Hamilton was. And in a game with the weather conditions like that, that's what you have to do to win. And there you go. Hamilton ended up coming out on top pretty handily, and I think the stats speak for themselves there. So I will kick it. I'm not going to kick it to anybody because I'm just going to be
we'll
talking to
kick it to
myself.
you.
But I'm going to talk about my first game, which is McNicholas and Chaminade Julien, a couple of teams that we haven't really, talked about much this year. I think we've briefly mentioned both of them here and there, but I wanted to bring this game up because I think that and Jacob can confirm this for me. I'm going to pull it up right here just so I know what I'm talking about. Yet McNicholas is sitting at 5-1, 188 points for, 60 points against. So they're very akin to Anderson. Maybe it's just that area of the city.
Yeah.
Because I think they're like 2 miles down the road from each other. But
Yeah, they're still not on Anderson's level quite.
no, but I
But
mean that's still a really great stat line.
yeah, it
And
is.
being from the area and knowing, a lot of people that went to McNicholas, for me personally, I know how big of a game it is when they play CJ.
Yeah.
And that's a big rivalry and within that conference, especially considering they're in 2 separate cities. Chaminade Julien's obviously from Dayton, McNick's from here in Cincinnati. So it's a little bit of an interstate rivalry there, which I always thought was intriguing. And it was impressive to me that I saw the score line 42 for McNick, 23 for Chaminade Julien. Unfortunately, their box score is extremely sparse, so I can't give you exact statistics. But I can tell you this much. It seems for me, from what I have here on my screen and what I'm looking at, is that McNicholas's defense really showed out on Friday night. They held the CJ offense to very little passing yards. I don't have a complete number, but it's pretty low from what I have. So I'm going to trust the statistics here and say it was probably pretty low. Shauna Julian was able to get some stuff going in the run game. It looks like they had 393 yards rushing, but Braden Bobo is the quarterback for McNicholas, and his stats are quite simply just pretty all around impressive. I mean, they don't have his stats up from Friday night, but I know the name, so that's why I knew to bring it up. I mean, he's
Yeah.
looking at an almost 75% completion rate on the season.
Yeah.
He's thrown 2 interceptions all year compared to it looks like he's thrown 12 touchdowns. So when you've got a quarterback playing at that level, then your team's probably going to be pretty successful. And I brought it up tonight because I think that division in that conference is worth noting as well, because we talk all the time about the GCL South. Got to give love to the other GCL conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just about to say that too. I mean, the GCL South is always the one stealing all the attention with, those four schools there, but you still definitely have some good programs in here. I mean, with Baden and Alter too. I mean, it is cool because you do get a little bit of that, like you were saying, interstate rivalry where you have some schools more in the Cincinnati area, then you got half of them that are up by Dayton. So, um,
Absolutely.
taking that trip up and down 75 and,
I just, yeah, I mean, I don't like wanted to cover it just because I think that these teams are worth noting. And I think that the success McNicholas has had this year is worth noting because, McNick's not a program we normally, you normally look at and go, man, they're tough to beat.
mm-hmm.
Right. They've always kind of been like a little bit of a middle of the pack team. You look at the GCL co-ed and it's always like you talk about Baden or Chaminade Julian. And it's just been a lot. McNicholas has just been able to handle it really well this year. And that was their first conference game of the year was against CJ. And so to come out, I mean, you're already looking at, you're 4-1 going into that game. And you go into this a big game and you come out, handily on top. And judging by the score line, their offense performed quite well in the adverse conditions. So that's an all around team win and something that they can build off going forward. I know Jacob's going to talk about this, and I'm not trying to steal his thunder, but I'm just trying to make sure I'm covering my bases on McNicholas. Because when I picked this game, I did not look at the box score. Admittedly, everybody and I saw it, and I'm like, oh crap, there's no stats here.
I was just doing some quick historical research, and so Baden has won the GCL co-ed the last 4 years. And last year they went 13-1, and McNick was 16-6, or not 16-6, 6-6. My apologies. So I mean, Baden's right behind them at 4-2. Total record tied. They're tied 1-1 in league play. So
they're 1-1,
or not 1-1. My bad. I just keep getting my numbers all messed up.
I thought I was wrong.
No, you're good. McNick, Baden, and Alter are all tied 1-0 in league play. So McNick's got a chance to, knock off, Baden kind of having that crown for the last four years or so. So it's going to be something, especially with only a few weeks left, 3-4 weeks left in the year. There's going to be some big games down the stretch.
Absolutely. It's definitely worth something to keep an eye on. I know McNick has their next game is at home against Alter. So that'll be another contest worth keeping an eye on as well. All right. So I will kick it back to Jacob, and he's going to go to Kentucky, and he's going to talk about one of the big games from over there.
Yes, I will. So this is one of the games that I was talking about earlier that got bumped to Saturday. So some of the Kentucky schools, they called off Friday, completely of school and canceled games. So the Cooper and Highlands game was a great one, a 24-21 finish that Cooper ends up winning, and that helped vault them to number 6 in our rankings, which just released today for week 7, the Blitz 5 top 25. So they beat number 12 Highlands last. So we had Highlands ranked at 12. Cooper 1 moves to 6-0 and 1-0 in their division. So huge win for them. And, it's just those Kentucky games, especially this time of year, you're getting a lot of good matchups, especially in the 5A realm. So looking at the box score a little bit, let me just make sure I know what team I'm on. So the KHSAA is a little bit different than the GMC in Ohio setup. So
yeah, their stats and box scores are weird.
Yeah, you have to do like individual teams. So I need to make sure which team I'm on. So that's Highlands. Let me go to Cooper first. So yeah, for Cooper, Cam O'Hara he was slinging it a lot. So we talk about how in the Hamilton game, just, difference in styles of play from the GMC on a rainy night versus Kentucky on a rainy night. So Cam O'Hara for Cooper threw the ball 31 times. And in the Hamilton and Princeton game, the ball was only thrown 18 times total, or not even 18, 13 times total. So he was getting them off. 13 completions, so not the best percentage, but he had 270 yards and a touchdown, so was able to get the yardage, which was huge for them, being able to move the chains and create explosive plays. Keegan Mayer had 16 rushing attempts for 116 yards and a touchdown. And then Isaiah Johnson led the receivers with 5 receptions for 116 yards. And then Jaden Combs had 79 yards. And Alexander Austin had 1 catch for 71 yards and a touchdown. So he had the big play. And then moving on to the Highlands side, they had a little bit more ground heavy approach. They had 43 rushing attempts for 160 yards. So Cooper did a really good job of, stopping the run here. Anytime you're holding a team to, close to under 4 yards a game, especially in this type of condition where it's rainy and kind of, they're just going to keep pounding the rock. So to be able to kind of hold them, and they didn't really break either. They didn't give up a rushing touchdown, even though they gave up 3 passing touchdowns. I think not letting the rushing touchdown happen was very big for just down the stretch. I mean, you gotta make plays somewhere and get stops somewhere. So I think being able to get stops in the run game, even though you let some things go in the passing game, you stop the run game, they're able to come out on top in that one. So really big win for Cooper in that rivalry game. So curious to see how Kentucky football shakes out the rest of the way, with who's gonna come playoff time kind of come out on top. Cubcast in there. I mean, we've talked about it. We cannot pick the correct games when it
No.
comes to Kentucky football. So we're definitely not experts in it, but for the fact that we haven't been able to figure it out, I'm just curious who will come out on top at the end of the year,
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have anything to add, but you can
So
say it.
I did cover this game briefly. I for my write ups for WLWT.com on Friday. Well, I guess I wrote this one on Saturday because all the Kentucky games were on Saturday. But this is the first time since 2012 that Cooper's been 6-0. And I think that that's worth noting, just because it's a great result so far to this point in the season for that program. And they're taking down some of the bigger schools, right? I mean, admittedly, I didn't know much about Kentucky football before, starting in this role, but after learning about it, that's a big win for them over Highlands. And you look at it from a future perspective, they've set themselves up in great shape for the end stretch, the final stretch of the year, going into the state playoffs. It's a big road. Were they on the road or were they at home? Oh, I don't remember. I almost said road win. I wanted to stop myself before I said that.
No, they did win at Highlands. So
they were on the okay. So
right,
big road win. Yeah, big road. I thought I was right, but I always want to double check. And I got my stats guy over here, Jacob. He's quick with that stuff. He pulls it up quick.
Yeah, just got tabs open.
It big road win for Cooper, and just at this point, you look at the Kentucky landscape, and it feels like it's so competitive, and like Jacob just said, and we can't figure out how to predict these games. But Cooper's standing tall, 6-0.
So another little interesting stat there too. So Cooper's 2-1 against Highlands in the last 3 meetings, and all 3 of those games have been decided by 7 points or less.
No, it's a great. That's a great
game. Yeah, like you said, the competition and just how close these games are is definitely apparent. So.
Absolutely, and then that's something to circle too. If these two teams meet each other, and granted, I don't know how Kentucky's state playoffs work.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's totally different than Ohio's, but if they meet each other in the state playoffs, then that's something you keep an eye out for sure. All right, so we will. I'll start talking. about my last game, and I covered it exclusively for WWT, and I thought it was a story worth telling. And if anybody's wondering why there's no highlights up, apparently the rain also stops cameras. I knew that, but there's not a lot of video footage from the games this weekend because of the weather. So there wasn't anything that I could pull up and put up there for you guys. But we move on. But Mason and Fairfield was the Blitz 5 game of the week this past weekend, and it was a big win for the Mason Comets. They pulled out the easy home victory, 31-13 over the Fairfield Indians. And it's a big win for Mason because, we always kind of think of Mason as a top contender in the GMC, and they're in the GMC, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. In the GMC, and it hasn't been a great year for them by Mason's stretch, right? And they came out and they took down a rival pretty handily. And you look at the score of the game, the box score, and the statistics. It was a pretty dominant performance from Mason from the get-go. The score line speaks for itself. I will say Fairfield did put up a pretty good fight. Their quarterback Dominic Back actually had a pretty decent game, all things considered, with the conditions. He went 7 for 20, not great completion percentage wise, but he did have 110 yards and a touchdown, which is more passing yards than Mason had all night. Yeah. Mason's quarterback, Ashton, I think his last name's Schaaf. Could be wrong on that pronunciation, but it's Schaaf. He went 9 for 14 for only 98 yards and 1 touchdown. So better overall passing night for Fairfield. Mm-hmm. But then you look at the rushing box score, the statistics there, and Mason just took it to Fairfield. Brandon Dunn was the star of the night for Mason. He went 169 yards on just 16 attempts, and that's 10.6 yards per carry. He had a 56-yard run for a touchdown. They got everybody involved in the game in terms of the running game. They also got their backup Temi Adesanyana. He got some decent carries on Friday night as well. He went 7 attempts for 45 yards. I mean, those were both averaging well over 5 yards a carry, and he also scored a touchdown as well. So it just like we talked about earlier when we talked about Hamilton and Princeton, you're playing in conditions like this. You have to be able to run the ball to be effective and score points and win these games. And Mason certainly did that. You kind of look at it from the other end as well. Fairfield's rushing attack, Dominic Back all things considered, he had a great night. He also, in addition to his 109 yards passing and a touchdown, he also had 77 yards rushing and a touchdown as well. So he was really kind of carrying that offense as much as he could. Their starting running back, Tyler George, only mustered 56 yards on 12 attempts. No touchdowns for him. So there's kind of, it's the same thing with Hamilton and Princeton, right? And there's kind of the bottom line there is Mason was able to effectively run the ball more and get all their backs involved, and they were successful. I mean, averaging 10.6 yards per carry is mighty impressive. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty solid game for Brandon Dunn. And I believe if I keep looking down, yes, Preston Estenesta. They have some interesting names on Mason. Yeah. Preston Estenenza, he had a 99-yard punt return for a touchdown.
Oh, yeah.
So that also helps as well. So
special teams, man.
Yeah, special teams win games.
I mean, 99 yards, it's crazy.
That's a long.
That's like a coach is getting mad at you for picking that. That should not be picked up or returned. I'm not sure what the play was. Like if the ball had bounced and it was just sitting there, you didn't want it to get down and made a bunch of guys miss. But if he fielded that on the fly, that it probably had his coach a little worried there. That's usually going for a touchback.
The box score says punt returns, 1 punt return, 99 yards, 99 average, 99 long, 1 touchdown.
Maybe he just woke up feeling like Devin Hester. I guess that's what happened.
Josh Cribbs is reincarnated. Right?
For sure.
So Mason was able to come out on top of this one. Big win for them to kind of put themselves on the right track going into the back half of their schedule. And you look at the standings, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but in terms of Mason, I mean, overall still sitting at 2-4, but the win against Fairfield does bring them to 2-3 in conference play. So maybe they can rattle off a couple more wins coming up here soon and put themselves in a better spot for the playoffs and for the back half of the season. They do travel to Middletown this Friday night, which I think, looking at Middletown's track record lately, they played the Lakotas and gave up 50 plus to each. So Mason's got to be feeling good, and that's not a knock on Middletown. I'm just making an observation. But that's, you got to feel pretty confident if you're Mason, coming off a big win, going into another conference game, and you got a decently little favorable matchup there. So that's a game.
And I mean, if you're Middletown too, just to tag in real quick, if you're Middletown, you're coming up back to back, tough losses, to two really good football teams too in this conference. They're battling for the top spot. So if you're Middletown, I mean, you're not necessarily out of this thing. West and East, I don't believe, have played each other yet. So
they have not.
I mean, if you're Middletown, you got to also try to find a way to scrap and claw your way. They were 3-0 at one point in the conference play. So they got to see if they can, it's a big game for them as well, just as much as it is for Mason. So
we talk about it all the time. We give the GCL South and the GMC a lot of love, but it's warranted. It's earned, and it's going to be exciting to watch. The GMC down the stretch here. I'm exceptionally excited for the Lakota Bowl, the East-West game. That'll be a great one. I think East has a solid shot to turn some heads in that game this year. They've been, they maybe haven't had every result go their way this year, but they've been mighty impressive. So it's definitely going to be fun to watch. And then Hamilton, hey man, big win. They could make some noise now. I mean, they upset the perennial top dogs. So now you got a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, they're coming off of back-to-back good performances. I mean, you look at the like last week, I think we talked about it. They beat Oak Hills 34-7, and then you walk into Princeton and it's 34-0. So, I mean, talk about building some momentum real quick. That's big for them. So definitely a fun week in the GMC for sure.
What it was. And I will, now that we'll move on to the next segment of our program, but I will point out a little bit of a housekeeping note. User error, host error. I thought the ticker was on the whole time, and I looked closely.
I didn't even notice it either.
I didn't either. That's why.
Yeah, we're both slapping.
I looked a little closer. I'm like, oh crap! I didn't turn the ticker on. So it's up there now. If anybody is clicking on this after the fact and wants to see all the final scores, just skip to I think 25 minutes into the show and you'll see them. My bad. But anywho, so we'll move on to our next topic in our next segment. And I'm curious, do you want to do your conference stuff first?
Yeah, I can.
Or do you want to do the top 25 rankings, since we do have those to show first?
I guess we'll show the top 25 and then we'll review the standings afterwards.
Okay. All right. So I'll throw this up there and then I'll click on my good old share screen. Excuse me. And then I'll pull this up. All right. Jacob, this is your area of expertise. You want to take this and run with it?
Yeah. So yeah, Moeller. So also this is all curated by the Shoemaker, the Shuru, along with our friends over at Channel 5 who run the Blitz 5. And so no surprise, Moeller back here at 5. They're 5-1 on the year, 2-0 in conference play after picking up a win against LaSalle. Still holding the number 1 spot. Haven't been topped all year. Lakota West is 5-1, 4-1 in conference play, putting the smackdown on Bolden's old team, the Coleraine. So 52-0. So they're sitting in 2. St. X at 3. I'll tell you one thing. They've been picking up some steam with Chase Herbstreit being able to run, being a dual threat quarterback.
He's really impressed this year on the running aspect.
Yeah, because that was last year. I didn't really see that much out of him. And this year, it's almost like a focal point of his game. It's like he just tucks it and runs and takes off. And then they also have Daniel Vollmer kind of as a wild back quarterback, athlete.
He does everything.
Yeah, he's playing all over the field. So they've been awesome together. gotta love if you're an X fan. You gotta love what you're seeing out of that squad as the year's gone on. I was there at week 1. They look like a completely different team when I watched them last week against, or not last week, 2 weeks ago against Moeller. So then Anderson at 4. I mean, Anderson has the most impressive
It's
just stat
crazy.
lines. I mean, I was looking; they're up to if on total for the year, they're at 306 points for and 26 points given up. The margin just keeps getting crazier, which is what we imagine, but it's
I think part of us is also kind of like, you're just kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, right? Not to
yeah,
say that Anderson's not that good, but like that's just such a crazy, run to be on.
yeah,
And they just keep, and they're playing these teams. Like, what was 2 weeks ago? They played Kings, and then this past weekend they played Mace or Milford.
Milford, yeah,
And it's like those are schools. Like, okay, that could be a little bit of a tougher matchup for them, and they
yeah,
just freaking roll right over the top of them. I mean,
yeah.
they're
And I
almost
mean, the
border.
crazy thing is too. I mean, and that you see Winton Woods right below him. Winton Woods is also 6-0 and 5-0 in conference play. They beat Little Miami 41-14. So, and both of these teams still don't play each other next week. So Anderson has Turpin, big rivalry game there, and then Winton Woods is playing Loveland. So I mean,
I,
they're both going to probably most likely move on to 7-0 and 6-0 in conference play and put up, pretty good numbers in doing so.
I think that they're gonna both end up. I think they play. You can talk. You can cover
Yeah,
this
I'll get into that
quickly in a
during
minute, but I
conference.
believe they play each other the last week of the season, and I
Yeah.
think they might both go into that game undefeated,
Mhm.
and that could be up for game of the year.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
this year
agree.
that's crazy. I'll scroll down here a little bit so we can cover some of these other teams.
Yeah.
The first, you,
So yeah, Cooper. We covered that earlier, getting the win over Highlands. Big win for Cooper, like we said. Their last 3 games have all been decided by 1 touchdown or less. So big win for Cooper. Next up, they have Connor, and then Princeton slides down to number 7, which is tough for them, but I also do think it's deserved. They had a rough week last week. They can definitely prove themselves if they, put on a show and blow out Oak Hills this week. I think they can move back up in the standings a little bit. They have some really good wins. They just had a rough loss last week, so I think they lock in and focus. They'll be fine. Elder at number 8, they played great against X. I mean, I know Elder's been battling numerous injuries. I think they have a couple captains that are, out and guys done for the year, but putting up a fight with X 22-17, and they haven't given up more than 24 points in a game. But they have a tough matchup. Probably one of the best games we have going into the next week. Moeller versus Elder at Nippert on Friday night. So that one will be great.
I think for my end, I'll throw a couple pointers, or at least one things that caught my eye out there really quick. 2 teams on here that we either haven't given much love this year, or they're worth talking about. I mean, Covcath I think started 0-2 this year, and they've rattled off 4 straight wins, and they're sitting at 4-2. Great turnaround for Covcath. Obviously, we all know that they're probably going to be really tough, on that side of the river. But slow start to the year for them. Managed to bring it back around, sitting at 14 in the rankings, 4-2, 1-0 in conference play. They got Grant County next week, who sits at 4-1 and 1-0. So that should be a good game as well. That could be worth keeping an eye on for sure. West Claremont is on here. We have not given them, I don't think, any love this year.
No.
Solid season so far for the. Are they called the Wolves? Something like
Yeah,
that. The
I believe so.
the
Yeah.
Wolves, Glen Esty and Amelia have risen from
Combined.
the
Yeah.
ashes, and they're playing some solid football. 4-2, 3-2 in conference on the year. Nice win last week at Turpin, close one, won by 3, 17-14. It says it on here. I've kind of kept up with them a little bit because they're close to my hometown. Their rushing attack has been pretty good. Two-headed dragon there. Landon Young and Bo Rickman. Greg points them out in his little write-up. They've had a great season, and that's an element of their game I think is underrated and worth keeping an eye on as we go to here down the stretch. They got Walnut Hills next week, which should be a win for them, but you never know. And then I don't. East Central's still hanging on, 4-2, 2-0. I think they're still probably the team to beat in the Indiana play. I mean, they lost to Moeller and I forget who else, but two solid teams from out of state. So you can't fault them there for those two losses. And then I will, down here at the bottom, he has his knocking on the door. Batavia, we talked about that last week. That big 83-0 win they had. I'm pretty sure, I'm 95% sure they had a nice little win again this week. I believe against Western Brown, and McNick is on there as well. And we talked with them a little earlier. And that is the top 25 from Greg Shoemaker and WWT.com. I will now throw it back to my my conference standing extraordinaire.
Let me get the screen share ready to go. And we'll jump right into this. So definitely big week in all these conferences. A lot of these conferences, as we've been going through them the last few weeks, have not had any games. We're finally getting to the fun part of the year where we're getting into conference games for some of the smaller divisions. Obviously, GMC with 10 schools, they're going to be playing conference games earlier. Some of these, when you have different divisions, takes a while. So looking here, we have a 3-way tie in the GMC right now with Princeton holding a tiebreaker over Lakota West and Lakota West holding – West and East haven't played yet, right?
No, Princeton beat West and East, though, I believe.
Okay, they beat both schools?
Unless they haven't played West yet. I know they beat East.
I'm going to look at the their schedule real quick. They had back-to-back. So that can also be important for them moving forward. Even that helps with this loss to Hamilton, where it's not the end of the world. You have, tiebreaker over those two schools. But so looking at the schedule, we kind of talked about some of these games, but you had Lakota West putting the beat down on Bolden's old school, Coleraine, 52-0. Mason picking up the win against Fairfield. We talked about that. Oak Hills getting a nice 36-14 win over Sycamore. And big game for my Highlanders this week as Princeton is coming into the building, I believe. I think it's a home game for them. So, like I said, big game for Princeton because they have to kind of get back and
get right game.
Get right for sure. And then, Lakota East just putting a smackdown on Middletown, and Lakota East has looked really impressive this year. So,
Colleen's ready for the year to be over.
Yeah, they got some things to work on. They got some things to figure out. So if I look at the schedule for this week, West and Sycamore and East and Coleraine, I would assume will be 50-point blowouts. So those games,
you never know.
Yeah, you never know. But Mason, Middletown, and Hamilton, Fairfield are both big games in the conference this upcoming week. Like we talked about, all those schools have something to prove right now. So, and then we just talked about Oak Hills, Princeton. So I'm now going to move on to the ECC, which Anderson and Winton Woods reign supreme for another week, as they will probably for a couple more weeks. But so just alluding to this point differential. So in conference play, Anderson 255 to 20 points allowed, and then overall 306 to 26. Just crazy numbers.
The thing about we talk about it every week, and we can't stop gushing over it. But I just now noticed this for the first time that their point differential is so much bigger than anybody else's because they've scored 306 points on offense.
Yeah, that's what's crazy is I think they're averaging over 50 a game.
That's crazy.
So Anderson's offense is amazing.
Their defense
And,
is amazing. I
you
mean,
know,
it's just
Coach Evan Dreyer there, since he's been there, he's kind of revolutionized their offense. So they've been
absolutely.
they've had a great season, along with Winton Woods too. I mean, Anderson's getting most of the love in this conference, but Winton Woods deserves it, and they probably are playing with a chip on their shoulder. So, going to be an exciting game when those two teams match up. But yeah, so looking at what happened in the ECC, you had Loveland beat Walnut Hills 34-6, Anderson beating Milford 57-6. Winton Woods 41-14 over Little Miami. Kings picking up a nice win over Lebanon 38-7. And then West Claremont edging out, Turpin this year. So if we're gonna look at the well, I want to just peek at the statistics too at this point in the year, a little over the halfway point. Just see the leaders. So yeah, um, Justice Burnham for Anderson through 6 games has thrown 1,700 passing yards, which is pretty impressive. And then Landon Young for West Claremont. So yeah, like you were talking about with West Claremont, talk about a 1-2 punch. They got 2 out of the top 3 guys in the
Mhm.
top 3 rushing leaders. And Trace Jalek, he was great last year for Anderson. He's doubled up on almost everyone else. Almost doubled up on Nate Lyman, who Nate Lyman's a great player for Kings. I believe an Eastern Michigan commit.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, almost doubling them up. So that offense is just very explosive. And then getting into the schedule for this week. So rivalry game with Turpin and Anderson. Little Miami's playing Kings. Winton Woods is at Loveland this week. Milford at Lebanon. And then Walnut Hills at West Claremont. So West Claremont can still, they're 3-2. Kings are 3-2. They're getting a nice matchup with Walnut, who's struggled this year in the conference play. So West Claremont has a chance to continue to prove themselves. But with that, I'm going to move to the Cincinnati Hills League, where we have Wyoming and Indian Hill both sitting at 3-0. So last week, I know we were talking about Wyoming, Indian Hill, Taylor. So Taylor 7-0 win over Marymount.
You'll
So
take it.
you take it in that situation. You definitely do. Because they were coming off the tough loss the week prior to Wyoming, where they play great game between Wyoming and them. But Wyoming beats Reading 31-0 last week, and Deer Park. I mean, this is an interesting score, 27-11. You don't see 11 very often.
No, that you have to take the might be Cincinnati high school score, Gami.
Yeah. So and then Indian Hill 41-14 over Madeira. So Indian Hill's looking really good. Wyoming's looking really good. And big win for Taylor too, to keep their heads up there. And I guess Reading didn't. Oh yeah, Reading lost to Wyoming. Okay, so yeah, Wyoming getting big wins over Reading and Taylor. And you got to wonder if Indian Hill is going to be able to give Wyoming a test, as Wyoming's already beaten 2 of the other top teams in the top half of this conference. So and Indian Hill has Reading this week, Finneytown at Taylor, Wyoming at Deer Park, and Madeira at Marymount. So again, moving on, we're going to the GWAC, where we're looking more north into the Dayton area, and Wayne picking up its first conference win this week. This has been a theme throughout. Wayne was a little bit better during our years in high school. So Wayne getting their first win in conference play this year. Fairmont 34-0 against Miamisburg. You got a matchup of the Springs this week. We talked about that last week. Springfield beating Springboro 16-6. So a little low scoring game there, but Springfield comes out on top. And then Centerville 48-13 against Beaver Creek. So right now in the standings, though, as you can see, Springfield's the only team sitting at 3-0. but that does not mean this conference is not wide open. I think Springfield has the opportunity to maybe gain some ground on some of these teams, but you also have Fairmont, Springboro, and Centerville sitting 3-1 or 2-1, and Centerville picked up really big win over Beaver Creek. Nice margin of victory there. So
I will say this. I'll add a little tidbit really quick. I was had to cover St. X and Centerville back about a month ago. And obviously, St. X, pretty handily beat Centerville. But Centerville's not a bad squad. They have some good players in that team, and I think they're worth keeping an eye on in this conference as well.
Yeah,
I know you just mentioned them, but I was just going to add on.
Well, I definitely, they've outscored Springfield. Springfield's just hanging their hat on their defense right now. I guess that's the bigger question. During conference play, Springfield's only given up 18 points. So, 6 points a game. I don't think they're going to lose very many games in conference if they're only on average giving up, 6 points. So I guess it'll be more who can get those explosive plays off on Springfield and kind of be able to score some touchdowns and get some chunk plays. So moving on to the GCL co-ed, which we were talking about a little bit earlier with the McNick game. And how Baden has also dominated this conference for the last 4 or 5 years. So you have McNick sitting at 5-1 overall, Baden at 4-2, but both teams, along with Alter, are 1-0 in league play. And then Carroll, Chaminade, and Fenwick all picked up losses this week. So you can see Baden with a 28-point win over Fenwick, 35-7. And then McNick, we talked about that, 42-23 over Chaminade, Julienne. And then Alter, 43-6 against Carroll. So there definitely seems to be, a clear-cut line a little bit in this conference where Baden, Alter, and McNick seem to be playing at a little bit higher level of football than these teams, than Chaminade and Fenwick and Carroll. So it's going to be really interesting to see. So you have Carroll at Baden this week, CJ at Fenwick, Alter McNick's going to be a really good game this week. So that's one I think you should keep your eye on if you're looking for some good football. And so with that, we'll go to the men's side of the GCL South. Or,
the men's side.
Yeah, the GCL South. So we have Moeller picking up a 38-0 win over LaSalle. So LaSalle's defense finally just ran into a better offense, I think. Moeller's very explosive, and I mean, we talked about last week, Matt Ponatowski is a phenomenal quarterback, and dicing them up, and St. X getting a big win over Elder fighting tough. I mean, Elder's defense has been great all year. In terms of the GCL, the record might be, towards the bottom, which is still good. 4-2 is not, a bad record by any means, but they've allowed the least amount of points all year. So they've played great defense, and they just need. I know they've been struggling with some injuries, but if they can maybe get healthy around playoff time a little bit more,
make some noise.
Yeah, they could make some noise. So then. We really don't have – I won't spend too much time on the Cincinnati Metro Athletic Conference because not very many division games have been played yet. Actually, the only one was Hughes versus West High on Thursday this week. So, Thursday night high school football. But Hughes picks up the win 42-6 against West High. Taft usually – produces some good players and some good squads. They're sitting at 4-1. Cincinnati College Prep at 4-1. Hughes picking up a big win, but they're 3-3. So this is interesting.
I will say I don't know if that's right.
I'm not sure because I'm not sure if this is updated honestly because
Withrow. Because I was putting in the scores for the ticker at the bottom, and Withrow definitely won this weekend.
Yeah, so maybe this is not updated, so we will just move on to the Southern Buckeye Athletic Conference. And so, talked about last week, Batavia winning, what was it, 83-0?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so this week they picked up a 45-7 win over Western Brown here. And then you have Williamsburg beating Fayetteville, Perry, 42-6. Clinton Massey and Wilmington. Clinton Massey coming out on top. Goshen 34, New Richmond 14, Bethel Tate 42, East Clinton 12, Blanchester 12, Claremont Northeastern 7.
This strikes me as I mean, Clinton Massey's got a good little. I guess you can add Clinton Massey into this mix as well, and even maybe New Richmond. I know they're on one conference, but they're still 4-2 overall.
Yeah.
I mean, Batavia and Williamsburg seem like the two top dogs here.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about Anderson's point differential. Look at Batavia's. Batavia's is quite large.
That's very similar. The defense isn't as stout, I guess, as Anderson, but offensively, that's almost identical.
I think an 83-point win will help you in that front.
Yeah,
but still, I mean, it's worth noting.
Even with an 83-point win, though, they're still putting up a lot of points. So, yeah Batavia is definitely looking good. And, on the other side of the conference, it's looking like it's Williamsburg kind of to lose. They're sitting at 5-1. The second team, even in conference play, there's 3 teams tied at 1-0, but Williamsburg's 5-1 overall, and then Bethel Tate and Blanchester are 2-4, and then that's their biggest competition, are those 2 teams. So I think the American side of the Southern Buckeye Athletic Conference will be a little bit better and more competitive throughout the remainder of the season, but something to look for. And that's about all I have for this. So I will stop sharing my screen and we can work on getting out of here in the next couple of minutes because we went a little bit longer today. So
that's okay. There's no money. Like I said, there's no Bengals game for us to run off to tonight. But I think all things considered, we talked about some good stuff tonight. Made some good observations. We just finished on it, but I'm actually quite intrigued now. I'd like to see how Batavia finish out the rest of their year. That's a pretty impressive point differential they've got, and we've talked a lot about the teams in around the tri-state this year that have those crazy point differentials, and you can throw them in that bucket as well. And that's just what it's all about. I mean, there's all kinds of different teams you can keep your eye on this year and any year because that's just how good high school football is here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add, Jacob?
No, I don't believe so. I think we kind of covered some of the games that people should look out for throughout the show tonight. So
for sure,
there'll be good games all over this week. So yeah, other than that,
no rain.
What?
No rain this Friday night.
Yeah. Hopefully no rain. But if we get it, you better be looking out for the run game because it'll be grind. We'll be seeing 45 carries out of teams tonight if we get another rain game. So
if there's a rain game, I'm gonna bet on West Claremont.
get some player props going. Bet on the running backs.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for tuning in and watching us on this wonderful Monday night. We will be back next Monday for a recap and kind of everything we normally do. But we'll see you guys again next Monday night, and I will sign off here. Have a great rest of your week.
Yep.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of the week, everyone.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, good night.